Good morning, Nick. This is Professor Anderson with a little bit of feedback for your writing assignment number 1. I'll share with you, I used the rubric for the assignment. It's going to take just a second to come up, and you'll find the rubric at the bottom of your assignment tab. And it's divided into 4 different sections, and these are the guidelines that I follow when assessing and evaluating student work. So these 4 sections show the description of the community or the workplace, the definitions of the inhibitor, a table with very specific examples, and then a paragraph to evaluate the effectiveness of communication. I strongly recommend using the rubric as your focal point, your guiding point for writing your paper. And they are attached to each writing assignment. So if I take a look at your submission, you have a great description here of the workplace, the setting itself. You have the definitions of the types of inhibitors that you encounter, some examples of situations where these inhibitors come into play, and then an overall rating. Let me go back and share with you a couple of things that I noticed. First, inside of this barrier, you give a great example and definition or explanation of why communication is effective. This first section is designed for you to simply discuss where you're working and what the communication structure is. So perhaps you could reorganize this to say, we work in a community area, it's located in an urban environment, or it's located in the suburbs, it's attached to a middle school, there are 28 coaches on 4 fields, communications are also between parents. So give a very defined description of that place where you are and the kind of communication. So you don't need to give a description of the history of why communication is important. Moreover, you should target the type of communication that takes place in that specific environment. So that leads into these second sections. You want to pick out, once you've identified and defined identified and described the type of communication and the type of workplace that you are in, then you can identify 3 to 4 inhibitors. Now, what you've done here that I want to comment on is you've used what's called parallel structure, and that's great. Anytime you have items in a series, you want to make sure that you list those items in the same fashion so that they mirror one another. So here you've identified the type or labeled the type of communication. You've given a quick sentence description and then given a brief discussion of why that's important. Though that's not necessary, what you have done, you followed the same format. And so using parallel structure in any area of any type of written communique is important. And then third thing, inside of the table, I understand where you have these communications. You need to give a very specific, in the middle of a spring session after the 3rd game, a new player showed up on the sidelines. I was unaware of that person. So you want to give the very specific details of an event where information overload happened, and then describe what the impact of that information overload was, or that this is really like an organizational barrier. So for each of these distractions, this template is designed to give a very specific example, identify the inhibitor, and then justify why was this example labeled this inhibitor. And then finally, when you get to the overall ranking of the communication on a scale of 1 to 100, what you've done is great. This is a great final paragraph of utilizing these 3 types of inhibitors that you've highlighted in your reasoning and justification for your ranking. So I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to your final copy.